morning, friends.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hello.
Welcome, everyone, to Coffee Talk. We're so excited to be here with you this morning. We are your hosts, Southborough Youth and Family Services. My name is Sarah Castle. I'm the director of Southborough Youth and Family Services. And with me this morning, we have Megan Island, who's our assistant director. Good morning, Megan.
Morning.
And we have Shannon Knyman, who's our program coordinator. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning.
And we're so happy to see a friend we haven't seen for a long time, our good friend, Andrea Egmont, also known as Andy. Andy
Hi.
is a fellow youth and family service, although you guys are called youth services where
yeah.
you are, for the town of Newburyport. And so Andy is the director of Newburyport Youth Services, and she's also the principal consultant of Egmont Youth Development. So we're so excited to see Andy again.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everyone. Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning.
So let's see. We are going to talk to Andy in a little bit about a concept that Andy was the first person to introduce us to, although, you know, she learned about it from some other excellent sources that we have since learned more about. But we're going to be talking today about positive youth development.
Yeah.
So before we go there, as we often like to point out that on this show, we try to bring some lightheartedness to a time that is very challenging for many. A minute ago, we were talking about the challenges of being parents of remote learners and kids who are part-time in school while we're working full-time. So I know Shannon has a really fun story to share about something she did this weekend that I think we can't relate to. I was trying to think, it's like all of us can relate to. Maybe we can. I don't know.
I'm sure at some point somebody has had, yeah. So we're not like outdoorsy people in my house at all. And so, we're trying though, because there's not much else that you can do. So, I do a lot of trail walking now, and that's quasi out. I mean, it's 100% outdoorsy, but it's not, orienteering. It's not, So my son and I, my 9-year-old went on a walk this weekend on a trail that we've done once before. And what we didn't, first of all, we go walking and then we end up in a field, and we run into friends that we know. And I'm like so amazingly into, this hiking thing that I'm like, so Greg, where are we? And he's like, this is the street you live on? And I'm like, oh, okay. He went
She's
back
got her
in.
binoculars out and
Totally.
it's right there.
We go back in the woods, and because we were just going to kind of we couldn't figure out the loop. So we were just going to go back. And then we get to a point, and I say to my little guy, I'm like, so which way did we come? And he's very, like, we all deal with anxiety in my family, but his is definitely not like, let's get lost. He's totally fine. He's like, I don't know, I think it's this way. I'm like, yeah, it seems fine. So we're walking, and I'm like, I don't know, dude, I don't know. This doesn't seem right. And he's like, we'll get there. And we get to a point where it turns into a swamp. And so, like, he's 9 and he's really light. So as he's walking across, like, he's like a video game that he's like, boink, 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 he can get across. Me, I stink. So my feet are like, and I fell.
Oh my God.
And every time that I'm trying to get up, it's pulling up smells around me that like the shaker started here where I live. And I think like the corpses of hundreds of years old dead.
Oh dear.
Were like, I was ready for someone to be like, Donkey, tell the lady to get out of my swamp. So I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to be, I think I'm going to buy a treadmill.
It's almost
you could
snowshoe
arrange some
season.
plants around your treadmill or something.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, then
Yeah.
you'll feel like you're outside.
Yeah. You could still wear like a safari hat and, stuff like that. That's really funny. She'll be here all weekend, folks. If you, I love the sound effects, and Shannon tells a good story.
Love
Always
it.
appreciate it. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. I hope you can find a happy medium with the outdoorsy exercise. We're about to embark on a new season.
I hope that my tan shoes, my really cool tan pull-on sneakers, like go back to being tan. They're black now.
Yeah.
That's what I hope.
I don't know. I wish we had the picture to show. Shannon had a picture of her feet after this hike, and
My bare
were-
feet. I mean, I had shoes on. How
I
did
know.
my,
It did- it
how did
looked
my
like you
feet look
didn't.
like that? I know.
Well, thank you for that comedic relief. It's a nice break. So we as we said, we wanted to have Andy on today to talk to us about positive youth development, which is a concept that we have fully embraced in our office since hearing about it. I have a handful of favorite quotes that I love to share. We were sharing one last week. Peter Benson, who passed away in 2011, but he was the CEO of the Search Institute where positive youth development work began, to my knowledge. And he liked to share the quote saying, "Youth are not vessels to be filled, but fires to be lit." And I love that. I think it's with really good intention that we as adults try to shape our youth, youth's futures by
The future of young people.
yes, youth's futures or the future of young people. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate your support. By imparting our knowledge, by directing them, and unfortunately, I think what we've found is that when we offer that youth really thrive when we help them to find their spark, when we help them to find their voice. We provide a platform for them to share their gifts, and we really foster development from the inside out versus looking at them as vessels to be filled. So that's what we're here to talk about today, and that's really what the concept of positive youth development is all about. So as I said, we in our office, we've really embraced this concept and tried to infuse this into a lot of our programming, specifically with the development of a Southborough Youth Council here, which we consulted Andy on and developing, which was so helpful. This is a middle school aged program that's completely youth led, and we've talked about that on a previous episode, but today we wanted to talk about it so that we could help viewers to understand what positive youth development is all about, and also to highlight ways that we as individuals and as a community can incorporate this into our relationships with young people. So, Andy, why is it so important that we stop looking at youth as vessels to be filled?
I think in the simplest terms, it's that we need young people in their best interest to be involved in their own development and to find the things that make them special, that light a fire that they're passionate about. You had talked about sparks, and that's a term used by the Search Institute, that if they are able to be engaged in their own development, then they will find things that they care about. They will make better choices in their own life, and we will get the best version of them for everyone else to experience. Um, just to go back to what you had said about the Search Institute and Peter Benson, I want to correct you a little bit on that. So, positive youth development is a philosophy. It's an approach. It's based on principles. It's been around for a very long time. Karen Pittman is one of the researchers early on that the quote she used was that problem. Oh gosh, now I'm going to get it wrong. She said that being being problem free isn't the same as being prepared, right? So young people need more than just to have people do the deficit based work that so many youth workers do, which is, what's the problem? Let's fix it. So positive youth development really says, instead of saying, what's the problem? Let's fix it. It's saying, what can we foster in these young people to support them to make better choices? And so the principles of the Search Institute, as you referred to, is actually an organization that did research on the 40 assets. So they did research and said, hey, here's 40 qualities and experiences that a young person can have. The more of which they have, the less high risk behaviors they get into, and the more thriving indicators they will have. And so they're one subset. There are some other frameworks of positive youth development as well that other people use. But Peter Benson, as you said, he's somebody I've really admired the research that he did and his perspective on working with young people. So that's one research-based framework. But the principles of positive youth development are really about, as you said, engaging youth in shared power, decision-making in their lives. It's about a community approach. It's about being the positive, so focusing on what we want young people to have, not what we're trying to change or remove. That deficit approach, it's exhausting. I mean, it's a really hard because the target keeps changing. So it's vaping, it's marijuana, it's opioids, but what does it all come down to? It comes down to kids having the supports in their life to be able to make healthy choices, and if they're not, to be able to get the help they need early on, right? So that's really the idea behind positive youth development, is that it's the positive approach. Some people refer to it as a positive approach to prevention, because so many of us are in communities where that's what we're really looking to do. But the idea of being a vessel to be filled, I think one of the big things that we're seeing right now is depression and anxiety. If you talk to anyone who works with young people, they're going to tell you that they're seeing numbers that are very high for anxiety and depression. And one of the things that research is showing us more and more is this learned helplessness. So we've created a culture of fear for parents, and a perception of judgment of parenting that I think a lot of parents have started to try to bubble wrap their children, and to, have this idea of success and what they need. It's all goal oriented, right? And the goal keeps moving. You can't ever really get there. And so it's causing our kids to not have the experiences to fail and learn from that, or to try something and not like it and figure out why they don't like it and what might they like more. And so I think that idea of finding a child's spark and fostering it, this isn't new, right? Educators know that if they can, so I've heard educators refer to it as the hook, that if you can find that thing that the young person is passionate about or excited about, you can hook that and use it for all different aspects of their life, to engage them. And so that's a big piece of it.
And what about adults? So having caring adults in kids' lives. So we have a lot of adult viewers for the show. And so one of the things that I was wondering if you could talk about or help people to, grab onto is, how do we help these kids to find their sparks? How do we be caring adults? Because it's shown that kids have best success when they have adults in their lives, and not necessarily parents or the people who live in their house, but people who are outside of their homes that connect with these kids. Like, what are some things that adults can do to inspire kids and help them?
Well, I think that you just made an excellent point. So again, research on resiliency, when we look at individuals who've gone through hard times or traumatic experiences, one of the key factors in resiliency is actually an adult outside the home that it becomes like a lifeline in some ways. It's a trusted adult. It might be a family member, but it's somebody outside the home. And I think that as adults in a community, we can look at ways to foster those relationships. We have, again, it comes back to this climate of fear where we're afraid to have adults around children now. And you know, there has to be a balance between caution um, and the benefits of having adults in young people's lives. Coaches are so important. Coaches are huge. A good coach, I should say, is really, really great. You know, maybe it's youth ministers at a youth group. Maybe it's a friend's parent. You know, I know from my own experience, I had some friends who their parents were really very trusted adults for me and people that I felt like I could turn to. So I think as parents, we want to foster those relationships with people we feel comfortable with and let our children know this is a safe person. This is somebody I trust for you to be able to talk to if you need to. And even have an understanding of what they need to tell you and what they don't need to tell you as a parent, right? Like, hey, you know, my kid really trusts you. I trust the advice you give them, but if it ever comes down to this or this, I really want you to let me know, right? And having that piece of understanding. As a community, it is looking at how we treat young people in the community. What is the message that we send? Do we only ever talk about when kids are getting in trouble? Do we only ever talk about what it means to have, you know, the media, like, do they highlight kids enough? Are they doing that kind of thing? That's one of it. It's making them feel valued. Do we give them a place where they have a voice and the opportunity to speak up in the community, which you're doing with your youth council, which is great. But I also think that it comes down to really simple actions. So when I do trainings, I end my trainings by saying to people, if the one thing that you take away from this is that you're going to start saying hello to teenagers on the street, it's huge, right? And they're going to look at you like, who are you? Why are you talking to me? But like, imagine if in the community, people all just started doing it. Like, we don't say, I mean, granted, anybody who's moved here from out of state is like, Massachusetts is the rudest place ever. Nobody says hi to anyone. But especially young people, right? We just we don't greet them. And I think just walking down the street and being like, hey, you never know which of those young people is the one that feels invisible, and that you've just acknowledged them, and by acknowledging them you give them value. And I think that is a very simple start to building a community that values young people.
Yeah, definitely. We had another question lined up for you, Andy, but I feel as though you kind of answered it. So Megan, I don't know if you wanted to ask, you know, because we were going to ask a question about, well, I think the question is related about the pandemic in particular. Megan, do you want to ask what you were going to ask?
Well, yeah, because I think you already touched a little bit on, you know, examples of how how adults in their daily interactions can use, you know, different ways of interacting with young people to build their relationships with them. But I'm wondering if you have any tips with the fact that we're social distancing and we're limiting interactions with people in general. Do you have any suggestions for ways that adults can connect with young people given the current state of the world right now?
Yeah, I think I was actually really thrilled to hear that in the spring, or back in March and April when things got shut down, how many teachers and educators were kind of forced to change the rules. These like pretty like strong boundaries that have been created to protect children and adults have also created these walls that really hurt connections. And suddenly it was like teachers were checking on kids, they were texting them, they were, just communicating in a much more informal way, which I just think is hugely beneficial. That just to reach out and check on someone. I think that with young people right now, I was actually talking to a young adult the other day, and having some challenges in her life, and she said, when somebody asks me like how I am, it's like that feels like a lot of pressure, because if I say I'm not good, I have to explain the whole thing, or they're going to tell me what I need to do. And if I say I am good, I'm lying, and it doesn't, like, you know what I mean. And I just thought, wow, that's a lot to feel that way. Like if I say I'm not good, then I don't like the response I get. So one of the suggestions that I would give is that if you're reaching out to a young person, rather than just saying, hey, how are you, which feels like chit chat, it feels like not a real thing, would be to reach out and say, hey, can we set up a time to talk? I want to find out how you really are. Right. So preface it like, this is a real conversation. I really want to check in with you. And I want to know what it is, and then set a time to do it, so they're not put on the spot, and they can think about what they really want to be able to share. And I think that that's a just a little thing about how we approach young people, and respect their time, respect their expectations, the same way we would do other adults, and just really give them that opportunity. The other thing I was thinking about before this was the love languages. And I don't know, you all are shaking your heads like but a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about. So there's this concept of 5 love languages, where people receive and give love in different ways. And you can look up love languages for relationships, for children, for employees, like it's all across the board. But it basically comes down to the idea of affirmation. So some people receive it as positive words of affirmation. Other people is somebody doing something kind for them, or taking something off their plate, which right now in my life, I will say, is probably the greatest thing anyone could do for me. Touch, affection, like physical touch, a hug, a pat on the back, a secret handshake. I'm a big fan of secret handshakes. Gifts for some people. And then what's the last one? What am I missing? Oh, quality time.
Quality time.
Spending one-on-one quality time. And so one of the things I think with young people is we have to think about what it is, how do they receive? How do they view it, right? So maybe we're thinking, oh, I'm going to do this really nice thing for them, but that's not how they receive it. And so if there's a young person in your life that you care about, that you want to express it, do a little homework, figure out like which of those things is meaningful to them, and be able to, kind of adapt your approach, because young people have walls up. I mean, a lot of adults do too, but if we can teach them as young people to, break it down a little and share what's going on, then I think we're in a much better place. I know we were talking about the Search Institute and the 40 assets. And so they also have this framework called the Developmental Relationships. And what that is basically they looked at these 40 qualities and experiences and said, well, how do we build them? What relationships actually foster that? Is it just having a nice adult in your life? And it's more than that. It's certain types of relationships that foster it. And so as a community, I know we've done some work in Newburyport around the relationships, and it's one of the pieces that we really want to be doing more with, to help people identify those different approaches, working with coaches, working with other groups, to say, like, here's some of the pieces that we know really help to build on that.
I wish we had, like, I'm writing notes down, like, we need to have Andy back, because it feels like, that's a whole other topic about developmental relationships that we just don't even have time for today. But
I like, you're talking a lot about listening, Andy, which I love, because I think it's one of the things that we really lack as adults with our relationships with kids, is that to really listen to what they have to say, because they are human too, with thoughts and ideas, and that one of the things that we know from the work we're doing, I'm sure in the work that you're doing, Andy, is that as adults, we love to tell stories. We love to say, so back in the day when, and for us, it feels like yesterday. And to them, like, we aren't like boomers, as kids love to say, I'm not a boomer.
I was like, I'm not a boomer.
I'm not a boomer.
Whoa.
But anybody over the age of I don't know,
I'm just
25.
old. Yeah, I'm just old.
Old, right. So our experiences, even though, as we're listening, we know that we've been there, we felt that, just don't, it's not necessary to tell your stories all the time. Just
Well, we do it to empathize, right? So we do it both with a moral to our story, but also to say, oh, I know what you're going through. And part of adolescent development is feeling like nobody actually knows what I'm going through. You can't know. And we're not necessarily going to convince them that we do. We can show them. And showing them is how we react to it rather than sharing our own experience. It's actually reacting and saying, I can hear the pain in your voice. I can hear how upset you are. I can imagine that this is really difficult because of X, Y, Z, and having that conversation. I think the other piece that I talk about often is raising the bar. We talk about that learned helplessness. We have totally worked what kids are capable of at different ages. They are capable of so much more than we give them credit for. And when we raise the bar, they rise to it. And if they don't, then we can give them, a hand and help them. But until they've tried, we don't need to intervene. Culturally, you look at other cultures and individuals are raised to become adults as soon as they hit puberty, like literally overnight. They go from child to adult and they're prepared for it because they've been raised and taught what they need to do. And we have continued to push off adulthood now. It used to be, after when you hit adolescence, you became an adult. And then it was like, well, after high school, you become an adult. Now it's after college, maybe you're an adult, right? And we keep pushing it back. Part of it is because people live older. There's a whole theory about how higher education is just to keep the workforce, keep fewer people in the workforce at a time because people live longer. But there's, a lot to be said about the fact that culturally, like we could decide that kids are capable of being adults and then raise them to be that. And we just we've gone the other way. Kids can be adults. That's a horrible sentence. You know what I'm saying? Kids can become adults at a certain age and be ready for it because we would raise them that way. And I think most young people now will tell you, I don't feel at all ready to be an adult. People I haven't experienced half of these things that I think I need. And it's because going back to that whole vessel, they've been filled. They haven't been ignited. And we want to light that fire so that they can create their own direction and help themselves get what they need.
We are running short on time. Like I said, I wish we had a couple of hours to chat with you because it's such an important topic. But I wanted an opportunity for you to highlight the work that you are doing. So I'm sorry to interject. In the couple of minutes we have left, you're, again, the director of Newburyport Youth Services, and you're also the principal consultant at Egmont Youth Development. Do you want to just share with viewers quickly, some of the work that you do in both of those arenas?
Yeah, definitely. I think right now I would highlight, before the pandemic hit, we had really started this great project in Newburyport called Youth Thrive, which we've partnered with an organization called Let Grow, which is a national organization around fostering independence and free play. And Dr. Peter Gray, who is at BU, BC. Oh, you're not supposed to mix those two up. I'm not sure which one it is.
I hope he's not watching.
I know.
Boston.
Boston. A prestigious Boston higher education. But he is just amazing at looking at the connection between the lack of free play and the resiliency skills that are leading to depression and anxiety. So that idea of neighborhood play, trusting kids to go out and play alone without adults intervening, and like getting back to that has been a really cool project here. In my consulting, I continue to work with communities throughout the area, the region, doing community training, working with organizations and doing board trainings and youth group retreats as well. And really, I've had the pleasure of working with the Boys and Girls Club of Massachusetts and the YMCA Alliance of Massachusetts as well, really talking about the connection between youth work and prevention, because we all know that any youth work we're doing is prevention, but really using positive youth development and the principles to connect it and educate people how to make those connections and be able to really present it as prevention and what we're doing.
Yeah, that's great. Such great work. Really awesome. Prevention work is so important, and as you've highlighted at the beginning of the show, that we tend to take a different approach by looking at deficits and problems to solve, and this is just such a positive way to approach prevention, and hopefully
and it can include a lot more people. I found, that communities, when you go in and say, hey, we're organizing a group that wants to support young people's development, do you want to join? Like, great, yeah. I mean, who's not? When you go in and you're like, hey, we're in, we're going to stop every kid from ever drinking alcohol.
You want in?
Yeah, people are like, how are you going to do that? And it's not that we don't want that, but it's a totally different approach.
Feels insurmountable because exactly what you were saying, the target keeps moving, and it is insurmountable. Yeah, we need to equip young people with assets and developmental relationships in order to help them make decisions for themselves that are healthy ones and be part of their own development. Yeah, that's great. Well, we're out of time. And again, I wish we had more time. Thank you so much, Andy, for coming on today. It was, good. We hope you will. It was really nice to see you again and hear that things are well out in Newburyport, and to highlight the great work that you're doing. Next week, we're taking a little bit of a breather next week. We're going to do something different. We are going to do some arts and crafts together. We've had a lot of heavy topics over the last several weeks, and as I highlighted at the beginning, that we try to find opportunities on the show for people to tune in and smile, laugh, fun, and engage in something lighthearted. So we have Mandy Roberge from Wicked Good Henna. I feel like I need to say it like that. Wicked Good. Wicked Good Henna, who she does a lot of great work with both, I think, Southborough Recreation and the library here in town. She's going to come talk to us about the benefits of arts and crafts and lead us in a special craft, which I just really can't wait to do that. It sounds like so much fun. And we're going to adorn our Halloween accessories because it's the week of Halloween. So we hope that you'll join us for that. And maybe viewers, if you want to do the arts and crafts project along with us, we can post some information about what you will need. And you can even share some of the pictures of you doing your arts and crafts with your witch hat on or something like that, or rabbit ears or whatever you choose.
I'm coming as Shrek.
Oh, good. That's appropriate.
That is a swamp thing.
Yes. That's great. Well, Andy, thank you so much again for coming on today. It was a pleasure to see you. And viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.